Alright, I was kind of pressed for time in the last one, so that went really quick. Um, but hopefully, y'all are able to follow along. But in this video, I'm just going to cover the rest of chapter 3, pretty much verses 17 through 24, 24. So it's going to be short compared to my other ones. Let's see. Alright, when in verse 17, when it says to Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree of which I commanded, or from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. And then it says, curse the ground because of you through pain and toil you eat of the days of your life, etc. So, if you want to dissect verse 17, like because Adam, he knew he was sinning, and also because he put Eve, or he listened to Eve above his creator. And a lot of people are like, when they hear that, it's like, oh, you're just trying to say that men or that women are inferior to men, etc. But I always say, well, it's not true, because God addresses Eve as being the bearer of the seed for this descendants from there on out. So the fact that God addresses women, or addressed Eve directly, shows that women can just as easily be in contact with God and as close as we are. Like, and what I think is pretty cool is that if in chapter, or pretty much like halfway through chapter 3 to the end, it emphasizes, or if you really read it, it talks about how, or pretty much guess supports the idea that man and woman are to walk together side by side. Like, one's not more important than the other. It's just we have roles, and the fact that Adam failed, or the fact that Adam listened to Eve above his creator, that showed that he put his job as spiritual leader of the house, which in other parts of the Bible talks about how men are supposed to be like the spiritual leaders of the house. And the fact that he put that job down, or I guess failed at that job, that's what God's like really hounding him about, or one of the things at least. And and then verse 19 says, until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for the dust you are, and to the dust you will return. So that just shows, you're not gonna have eternal life anymore. You're not gonna live forever. You're gonna die, and when you die, you're gonna go back to the ground which you were formed. That's straightforward what it says. And like in verse 18, it says, it will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your brow, and you will eat your food, etc. I'm wondering if the thorns and thistles, in there it talks about like plant reference, but I'm wondering if it's like a field of men, because we could be surrounded by evil ones and surrounded by people of destruction, etc. So we're not going to have a life of living with everybody that's spiritually, or if everybody's the way they should be, spiritually, and have that lightness of God in them. There's going to be ones that are polar opposites and everything else. So it's not going to be that perfect life that it used to be before Adam and Eve sinned. So I'm wondering if that has some kind of a correlation there. If you read verse 22, it says, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. So that shows you right there that we were to live forever. That's what was supposed to happen, but of course Adam and Eve screwed that up for us. Let's see. Okay, the last part of it in verse 24, a cherubim, is placed to guard the way to the tree of life, which is on the east side. And a cherubim, if you want to know what that is, if you look in Ezekiel 1, it has a description in there, which there's something else in Ezekiel 1 that I'll cover when I get there, which is pretty weird. And I'm wondering if, let's see, Well, a cherubim is mentioned in Ezekiel, Isaiah, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and it's mainly associated with the house of God. And it's only mentioned once in the New Testament in Hebrews 9:5, and it's referring to the mercy seat of the Ark of Covenant. And cherubim is plural for cherub, which means a winged celestial being in English. And a lot of times, like in Eastern countries, it's referred to as like a small angel bearing like kid, I guess. It's usually portrayed as a child. So, of course, it says cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way of the tree of life. So it's kind of like God kicked Adam and Eve out, and He put those there to block, from the tree of life. Let's see. Like I said, if you read Ezekiel 1, it describes it in detail. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, Ezekiel 1, if you really read it, like, let's try to find it. Ezekiel 1, yeah, like literally the entire chapter, it describes fighter jets. Like, I know that sounds weird, but if you read it verse by verse and think about what it's describing on a fighter jet, it lines up perfectly. Let's see if I can find something. See, there were wings that spread out upward. Each had 2 wings, one touching the wing of another creature on either side, and 2 wings covering its body. Each one went straight ahead. Wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, without turning as they went. And so if you want to think of it, it's like fighter jets flying in formation, and, they're just going straight ahead. It says, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces, and this was the appearance of the structure of the wheels. They sparkled like chrysolite, and all 4 looked alike. So if you want to think of the wheels of a fighter jet, they're aluminum or metal. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. Fighter jets, like their wheels, they're side by side, and so when a jet turns, like it turns on a dime. So that's kind of how it looks like, and it can turn completely sideways, or the front wheel can turn completely sideways, so it just pivots. So that's why it's the reference as to a wheel intersecting a wheel. It says, as they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creature faced, which is kind of what I just said. The wheels did not turn about as the creatures went. Or another translation is, do not turn aside, which I don't know how that works, but it says their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. Talking about the, I think of it as like talking about the bolts. It says, jumping around, when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose, when they go back up into the body after they take off. Okay, when it says, wherever the Spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels would rise along with them, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. And so if you want to think about it, like wherever those wheels turn, the jet's going to go. Or you can think of it as like the pilot, wherever he goes, the jet goes. So I don't know. But I was going to try to keep it short, but apparently, I get sidetracked. So if you want to look at it in more detail, feel free to. It's pretty interesting. So I hope y'all found this video interesting. And if y'all figure out anything else, let me know. So thanks, guys.